Hey everyone, it's Miss Brood. We're back with lesson 1-2. So at each time you start watching these videos, what I'd like you to do is as soon as we start, pause a moment, maybe 30 seconds or something, to think about what did we learn last time and be ready for this day's lesson. So push pause. I'm going to push pause here. Push pause and stop and think, what did we learn yesterday? Just recall that in your mind so that you're ready for today's lesson. Okay, well, I hope one of the things you remembered is that we talked about rows and columns. Rows, remember we talked about are going side to side. These are the rows on the multiplication chart, the side to side ones, and columns are up and down. These are the columns. That's going to be really important as we start thinking more about factor puzzles because it's really going to help us. If you're confused between rows and columns, you're going to get confused a lot. So make sure that you're refreshing yourself. The rows go side to side, columns go up and down. Now, we are on page 7 in our book, so I'd encourage you to have your book open to page 7 and be ready to do a couple of problems along with me, because then you'll have a couple done and you'll be able to go, oh, I see where she's going with that. And then you have some more factor puzzles to practice. And I know a few students already got started. They kind of got the hang of it yesterday. They're kind of fun once you get the hang of them. Okay, so I'm going to start on number 12. So please look down in your book at number 12 with me. All right, here's number 12. It's got a 54 and a 63 in the top two boxes and a 24 in the bottom box. Now remember, these boxes represent one of the boxes on this chart. So this 54 represents some 54. Something times something gives us 54, and it's one of these boxes. Same thing with this 63. Something times something gives us 63. It's one of these boxes on the chart. Same thing with 24. Now, we can start anywhere at all, except, I hope you remember, we can't start with the empty space. It's really hard in math to start with the stuff you don't know. You've got to kind of start with the stuff you already know. So we could start looking for a row that has 54 and 63 in it. We could start looking for a column that has 54 and 24 in it, but we can't really start here. So I'm going to start with the 54 and 24 because this is tricky. Now, where on our multiplication table do we see a 54 and a 24 in the same column? Well, let's scan quickly. There's a 24. But there's no 54, so that's not it. There's a 24, but there's no 54. There's a 24 and a 54. Cool. We found it. But you might be saying, wait, Miss Brood, the 54 has to be on top. There isn't a place on this multiplication chart where the 54 is on top and the 24 is on the bottom. Don't let that trick you. These squares might rotate. They might shift around, and that's okay. That's part of what makes them fun to solve. So don't let that trick you. This 54 and this 24 are still in the same column. And what column is that? It's the 6 column, all the way up and down. 6 up at the top, even though it doesn't say it, 6 down at the bottom. So it's in the 6 column up and down. It doesn't matter that those two numbers are upside down. We just got to remember that they're upside down. No big deal. So let's put a 6 and a 6 because it's in the 6 column. I'm going to actually take a different color because that one's just a little hard to see, I think. Let's start with purple here. I think that one's going to be just a little easier to see. Now, what can we do next? Well, I hope you're thinking, hey, we could find the row that has 54 and 63 in it. Sure, we could. Now, do we want to have to start at 1? Do we want to have to start and go, well, it's not in the 1s. Well, I don't see 54 and 63 in the 2s. I don't see it in the 3s. We absolutely could do that. But if I already know that we're looking 24 and 54, if I already know that and I'm looking for a row to solve a factor puzzle, I have a clue. 54 and 63, I know is going to be in the one of those, it's going to cross one of those numbers. So I know it's either going to be in the 4 row or it's going to be in the 9 row because that's where those two numbers are already at. Look at this. I could have gone 1 to 1 row, 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 keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, keep looking, keep. Hey, there it is. 54 and 63. Look at that. So now I have a 54 and a 63 in the same row. What row is that? I hope you said, oh, that's the 9 row. Because 9 times 6 is 54. 9 times 7 is 63. So that's the 9 row. So I'm going to put the 9s on the outside. That's the row they are. Those are multiples of 9. Now you might be starting to see it appear what the number is going to already be. You might be making a prediction before we fill in the rest of this table, this chart. You might say, oh, I know what the answer is. You might already know that. If you don't, or especially to check yourself, you're going to say, hey, you know what I remember? I remember that the two numbers that are on the corner, when we multiply them together, they give me the box in the corner. 9 times 6 is 54. Now, you might say, okay, but I'm also stuck. But you're not, because we know 6 times something gives us 24. These two numbers, 6 times something, we already have the answer, 24. What is it? 6 times what? You might know your fact. 6 times 4 is 24. But if you don't, look at this. You already identified the 24. What row is that in? It's in the 4 row. You already figured it out. So that 4 goes right here. Why? Because 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 4 is 24. Now, if the 24 that we're finding is in the 4 row, we know it's in the 4 row all the way across. So if we have 4 on one side, we know it's in the 4 row. It's got to be on the 4 on the other side. What about this 63 now? We know 9 times something will give us 63. These two outside corner numbers, when we multiply them together, give us this inside box number. 9 times something gives us 63. You might know a fact. You might know, oh, I know that's 7. 9 times 7 is 63. Or you might say, hey, I've already identified the 63. It's right here. What row is it in? It's in the 9 row. What column is it in? 9 times 7. It's in the 7 column. So 9 times 7. There it is. So the 63 matches the 9 and the 7. 9 times 7 is 63. Now, you might say, okay, well, visually, I can almost see where it is, but I'm still confused. Look at this. We have 4, excuse me. If it's in the 7 column up here, we know it's in the 7 column down there. The whole column is the 7s, multiples of 7. 7 times 4. What is 7 times 4? Hopefully you know 7 times 4 is 28. Now, we think our answer is 28. Let's look over here. Look at that. It makes that box all the way around. Did you already know the answer was 28 when you saw the 3 corners? Did you already know the missing one was 28? You may have. Nice work. But you might be saying, hold on, that's not the same. It's upside down. The 54 and the 63 is on the top. Here, it's on the bottom. No big deal. Remember, you can flip it over. So just like if I say, here's our math book, and then I said, now this is a hard one. Get ready. Hold on to your hats, ladies and gentlemen. This is a tough one. What is this? Well, it's our math book, right? It's our math book. It's just upside down. The same thing is for this. You still have the same numbers. They're still in the same rows and columns. They're just upside down. It's okay. You can do that. So don't let that trick you. So if you are still figuring this out, it's okay to go back and watch the video again. It's absolutely okay to do that, to hear and see how to use that multiplication chart. Now, so if you're like, oh yeah, that's where I need to stop right there, just stop the video right now. But if you're like, oh yeah, I totally get this. In fact, I wonder, I might not even need a multiplication chart. Hold on to keep watching this video. I've got a quick trick for you. I'm going to show you how to do one without even using the multiplication chart. So you decide. If you already know, if you're like, oh, this is enough, I need to use the multiplication chart and do some practicing, stop right here. Don't watch the rest. If you're like, no, I got this part easy peasy lemon squeezy, I'm ready for something faster, and then pause and then keep watching. All right, if you're ready for a challenge, here it is. We're not going to use the multiplication chart. We're just going to use the factor puzzles. We're going to say, I know I can't start here, but I got to start somewhere with facts I know. So I'm looking at the 15 and the 24. I'm thinking to myself, I know a fact that has a factor. Remember, a factor times a factor is a product. It has one same factor. Something times something else equals both of those numbers. A similar factor, are they both just 5 times something give us both those numbers? Nope. So we know they're not in the 5 row. What about 3? You might say, I know that 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 8 is 24. So I just know, I don't need to look on the chart. I know that those are in the 3 row. They're both in the 3 row. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 8 is 24. Now you might say, okay, I'm going for the column. I'm looking for a common factor. I know 5 times 3 is 15. And I know 5 times 7 is 35. So I know they must be in the 5 column because 5 is a factor in both of them. Remember, don't get confused that they're upside down in terms of the multiplication chart. No big deal, because you know that 5 is a factor in both of those. Now, once you've thought about that, you can use your multiplication facts all around the rest of the table to help you. So, 3 times 5 is 15. You're good right there. 3 times something gives you 24. You said, oh, I know that's 8. If it's in the 8 row on the bottom, it's also in the 8 row on the top, or column, I'm sorry. If it's in the 8 column on the bottom, it's in the 8 column on the top. If the columns go all the way. So if you put an 8 down here, you have to automatically put it up there because you know it's still in the 8 column. Over here, 5 times something gives you 35. You say, well, I know 5 times 7 gives me 35. Now, you say, okay, if it's in the 7 row on this side, it's got to be still in the 7 row over here. So you can put a 7 there. Then you say, hey, look at this. I know 8 times 7. 8 times 7 is 56. I solved it knowing my math facts. Nice job. If you're like, oh, I think I did it, but I want to check myself, let's just circle those boxes and see if they form a square. 35 and 56 in the 7 row. 35 and 56 in the 7 row. 15 and 24 in the 3 row. 15 and 24 in the 3 row. Didn't they make a box? They did. Way to go. See you next time.